This was the 27th NFL draft of my life, and the 5th that I have been covering the NFL full time. And I gotta say, this may be the best draft class I've ever seen. But not everyone dominated the draft. So in today's video, we'll be covering the top 6 winners and losers of the 2024 NFL draft. I will be listing the winners and the losers from 6 to 2, and then reveal the biggest winner and the fattest loser at the end of the video. Starting with the 6th biggest winner of the NFL draft, which is the Carolina Panthers. They addressed the huge need they had at X out wide by moving up in the draft to get Xavier Legette. You pair him with Adam Thielen and the Deontay Johnson trade from a few months ago, and all of a sudden, Bryce Young's got a ton of weapons. Versus last year when I felt like he didn't have any. And remember, Jonathan Mingo is in the depth chart of this wide receiver room as well. And something else the Carolina Panthers desperately needed was a 3-down workhorse running back. So they took maybe the best running back of this draft class, Jonathan Brooks. And I think he's going to come in and start immediately over Chuba Hubbard. Cowboys fans are punching the air right now. Don't worry, Cowboys fans. We'll be talking about the Cowboys a little later in the video. They also got the dual threat tight end out of Texas. They needed tight ends as well. And with their depth picks in this year's draft, kept working on that front seven. The only thing that limits the Carolina Panthers from being higher up in the rankings of biggest winners this year is the fact that last year they traded their first round pick away to try and get Bryce Young. And they could have gotten that first round pick back at least in the middle of the first round or maybe in the 20s if they would have made sure to get a first round pick before they traded Brian Burns. Those two things keep the Panthers back at 6th best. Which brings me to 5th best, a team that didn't have that many draft picks but maximized every single pick. Bears. The Chicago Bears getting an A+ in their draft from multiple experts, because they finally got a franchise quarterback, someone who is expected now to be the best quarterback in Bears history, and he hasn't even played it down yet. And the Bears are kind of already all in. They traded for Keenan Allen, and he's already in the receiver room. They got DJ Moore in that Bryce Young trade that I mentioned earlier, and then drafted Rome Odunze brother. They still have Cole Kmet. This team's offense is all of a sudden loaded. Justin Fields is somewhere just crying himself to sleep every night. But like I said, the limited amount of picks that they were able to make in this year's draft keeps them as the 5th biggest winners. Also, I feel like the Vikings crushed. The Lions and Packers did decent. With a rookie quarterback, I still see the Bears finishing maybe close to the bottom of this division. It's going to be a war in the NFC North this year. Which brings me to the 4th biggest winners of the 2024 NFL Draft, the Washington Commanders. I was telling my buddy, who's a diehard Washington Commanders fan, that Jaden Daniels is the pick. Well, at first I was telling him it was Drake May. But my opinion changed very quickly when I popped on Jaden Daniels' tape. And I think, call it a hot take, Chicago Bears fans, with all the praising I just did of your guys' draft, that Jaden Daniels is the safest pick for Rookie of the Year next year, and the safest pick to be a franchise quarterback because there's the least amount of risk here. He is built for the league. He's got the big arm to push down the field, solid accuracy, and extremely mobile. With the size and body build that's not going to get too dinged up like we see Lamar Jackson year after year. This team's already got a bunch of weapons for him to throw to. Austin Eckler out of the backfield, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson. And they went and got a McCaffrey boy, which has never gone wrong for any team in the NFL's history. And they drafted Ben Sinnott, who's going to sit probably behind Zach Ertz, but come into games in blocking situations, play action situations, and just give Zach Ertz a breather. Dude's getting old. Dude's banged up. We can't have him out there playing full time like he used to have like 100 receptions every year. And then I love the additions to defense. Johnny Newton fell because of injury concerns, but this kid can ball. He may have been the best defensive tackle available in this year's draft. And now you get him into a room with great examples, Jonathan Allen and Darren Payne. Considering you're trying to beat Philly after that awful Dallas Cowboys draft, some more foreshadowing. You got to be able to beat the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line on the inside if you want any chance with Saquon Barkley now on the team. And they got my guy Mike out of Michigan. He can both play inside and out and is going to free up Emmanuel Forbes to go ahead and be the ball hawk that they drafted him to be. Keep in mind that Dan Quinn has been the defensive coordinator for Richard Sherman's high interception seasons, Desmond Trufant's year after year production, into Trayvon Diggs with the Dallas Cowboys, and when Trayvon Diggs went down, Deron Bland had a shit ton of interceptions as well. Expect Emmanuel Forbes to thrive in this defense a lot more than he did than trying to play man-to-man coverage outside on AJ Brown's big ass. And Sandstro can legitimately play man-to-man. It's a match made in heaven. Moving on to the team that had the 3rd best draft this year, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I feel like a key to the Steelers having success next season is pounding the football. They need to run the shit out of this thing with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. But you can't do it behind one of the worst offensive lines in the entire league. What did they do? At 20, they got one of the best interior offensive linemen in the draft. And then at 51, they got one of the best centers available in the draft. They added another guard a few rounds later, and they're starting to build towards this offensive line being a lot better. And of course, along with a strong rushing attack, this Steelers defense is going to be what wins them games. They're taking the chance on Peyton Willis, who everyone loved but is worried about his injuries, and even got a Deontay Johnson replacement by sneakily drafting Rome Wilson. I can't wait for Justin Fields to get in there and run like Cam Newton next year after Russell Wilson fails for the first 4 weeks. Which means to the second biggest winners of this year's draft, Philadelphia Eagles. They do this shit, man, over and over again, year after year. How does Quinyon Mitchell fall to their lap at 22nd? How does Cooper DeJean fall to 40th? And they got Will Shipley to be behind Saquon Barkley, kind of the perfect backup in 1-2 with him. And Jeremiah Trotter Jr. fell all the way to pick 155. They've drafted the dad and the son. They just let the draft come to them year after year after year, and there's an opportunity to improve their roster. They pull the trigger. They ain't scared of nothing. That's why they're always in contention for this division, generally always in contention for the NFC. And I will tell you who won this year's NFL draft, who finished in first after I reveal the biggest losers. Starting with the 6th biggest loser, not because they drafted bad players, but just kind of head-scratching pick. The Las Vegas Raiders. And boy, do I love hating on the Raiders. First of all, I have to say, Tom Telesco's full of shit. He said all that time with the Chargers that he was the best player available GM, but he picked Quentin Johnson over Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison and a whole list of other players, Dalton Kincaid. He traded it up for linebacker Kenneth Murray and traded it up for running back Melvin Gordon, but now he's actually taking best player available. So when Brock Bowers fell to 13, he pulled the trigger even though he has Michael Mayer on the team. And I don't know what you Raiders fans think, but I thought Michael Mayer was on his way to being at least a Pro Bowl level tight end in this league. Maybe an all-pro level tight end in this league. And now he's not going to get enough playing time for either of those two things to happen. He's eventually going to walk in free agency right into another team's lap and have a great career probably. And I'm not saying that Brock Bowers isn't. Brock Bowers probably will be great for the Raiders, especially if they can get a quarterback in the next couple of years. But who's playing right tackle for this team, man? They drafted a center a couple picks later, but still, you're going to have to stop the edge rushers. That is the most important positions on your O-line. And everyone keeps saying that they're going to be running 12 personnel and double tight end sets. You guys are all dumb as fuck. You're trying to justify this pick in any way you can. Even if they do come out in 12 personnel, only one tight end each play can catch the football. Only one player on the field can touch the football. A lot of those plays ran out of double tight end sets are going to be handoffs to Zamir White. Drafted Brock Bowers to help block in double tight end sets at 13th overall. If anything, just go off of the fact that Davante Adams is getting older. Also, if the quarterbacks don't do well this year for the Raiders, I know I've been calling it year after year, but eventually it's going to happen. Davante Adams is going to want to hit the road. So you could argue that the Raiders need a primary weapon for their quarterback down the line in the future. What would help the Raiders the most this year is if Davante Adams goes off and is able to carry Gardner Minshew. Y'all can stop with that AOC crap. We hope that you guys start AOC, which means in order for Tay to get more targets and receptions to help carry Gardner Minshew, you need tackles to block. Raiders are going to give up a lot of sacks again. I don't know if you remember last year, they gave up 8 sacks to the Chargers defensive line without Joey Bosa. And a year before that, I think they gave up another 6. And that was with Derek Carr, the veteran, the guy that's supposed to be experienced. The Chargers have neglected the O-line for the last 10 years. It ruined the end of Philip Rivers' career. It's ruined the beginning of Justin Herbert's career. Now you got it in Vegas. Congrats, guys. All right, enough ranting about that. Let's go to the 5th biggest losers of this year's draft, the Buffalo Bills. Helping the Chiefs get Xavier Worthy, the team that you know you have to beat to get to the Super Bowl, and helping the Houston Texans get Stephon Diggs, another team that you know you have to beat to get to the Super Bowl, already makes this draft an L. And I like Keon Coleman, but I don't think that he's ready for the workload he has to cover from them losing Diggs. I will say, draft Dalton Kincaid in fantasy football and thank me later for it. The Jets fixed their O-line this offseason. The Dolphins are preparing to try and win some games in the cold in Buffalo late in the year. And the Patriots drafted maybe their franchise quarterback. While the Bills got significantly worse. They're not going to be able to play like they did last year and win this division. Remember, they squeaked it out. They had to make a huge comeback to win this division. I understand that Buffalo has to hit the reset button a little bit. That doesn't excuse you from losing an NFL draft like this. The 4th biggest loser is the Browns, who still don't have a first-round pick from the Deshaun Watson trade. Which, by the way, we have all the picks from the Houston side of that trade now selected. So we could tell who probably won that trade, and it's clearly the Tech. They got Damian Pierce out of that deal. Tank Dell. Kenyon Green, already one of the better interior offensive linemen in the league. Will Anderson. The Browns really fucked up. And then in this draft, I don't feel like Cleveland added a single starter to their roster. 3rd biggest loser of the 2024 NFL draft is the San Francisco 49ers. And every year, I trigger 49ers fans by saying they lost the draft. But year after year, the 49ers are bad draft picks away from winning the Super Bowl. The team is so loaded, and I understand they've gotten Brock Purdy in the 7th and all these other picks. Feels like they get one guy every draft out of their 7th selection. And when you're doing stuff like drafting kickers in the 3rd round, and trading your whole entire future for quarterback busts, and then failing to get a deal done for Brandon Ayuk in the 1st round, how am I supposed to say that the 49ers won anything? They might win a bunch of games next year because the roster is loaded, but they did not win the draft because I don't feel like they made the pick or made the move that's going to help them get over the Super Bowl hump, which is all they can do now. They can't go any further than just winning the Super Bowl. Anything else is back. Pull up the 49ers draft class and tell me if they drafted a guy that's going to start week 1 on this roster. In a year, they should be all in before the Brock Purdy contract comes up. I believe they have 2 more years max to where they can keep this whole team together. And after that, they're going to have to make some tough decisions on defensive players probably. Maybe George Kittle, Deebo Samuel. So this is quite frankly their last Hail Mary shot, and they drafted a backup receiver with their 1st pick. Didn't have another pick until 64 and took like the 10th corner off the board. And what the fuck are the Atlanta Falcons doing? The 2nd biggest losers of this year's NFL draft for sure. They had the 8th overall pick, another team that should be all in while Kirk Cousins has some youth left in him. He could be gritting on NFL fields for much longer, but instead they drafted a quarterback instead of a defensive weapon that could help. I have no clue what the plan is here. They just signed Kirk Cousins to a $100 million deal. Are we saying Michael Penix isn't going to get in there until he's 29 or 30? He's going to need a contract by then, and he hasn't played a game yet. And this kid is very talented. A team would have traded up into the spot with Atlanta to get him. Probably the Raiders. But instead, they fucked everyone over and took him, and now are fucking over this kid's career as well. All right, I will reveal the biggest losers and winners of this year's NFL draft. But first, I'm NFL Mike, an NFL content creator that covers the NFL 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, twice on Sunday. So if you're an NFL fan, I know you will like the channel. Help me out, support me, and tell the algorithm to send this thing to more NFL fans like me and you by liking the video for one, sharing it with fans of the teams that I mentioned, and then subscribing to the channel before you forget. Turn on notifications so you can be here every time I post. Then hop down in the comment section below and tell me who you think won and lost this year's draft. The biggest losers of the 2024 NFL draft is the Dallas Cowboys. And the biggest winners, unbiased opinion, I promise. You can't even argue. Go look at the draft class. It's the Los Angeles Chargers. Jim Harbaugh, Joe Ortiz. I love it. But really, at the end of the day, this is all opinions. We won't know who won this year's draft until 3 or 4 years in the future. But I guess sooner rather than later, we'll have the answers to all of these questions because the ball definitely won't lie.
Bill Flames, I went Mike on the mic. With something brand new, one time for your mind. He gave you fair warning. Now it's time to smack him in the mouth with that raw sports talk from the town. Sweet chin music to your favorite sportscaster.